And I'm just gonna lurk in the back and let Reed handle Q&A. I'm just here if anybody needs anything.
That's good. Interesting.
Also, I will say that I have a very needy cat lurking around somewhere. So if you see you see movement, then it's just Nemo.
Got one of those too.
Yeah. We bought him a computer. Like we found a scratching pad that's also shaped like a computer, and it's the kitschiest thing, but he still wants to be
Doesn't
on
work.
my laptop. No.
It doesn't emit the heat. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you
I
don't
think
want it.
he also sees Zoom, and he sees like people, and he basically just like sees me and my partner at home. So he gets really excited, I think, to see others. Like
Hi everyone. So we'll just be waiting a couple of more minutes for people to trickle in, and then we'll start the seminar. Okay. We'll start, and then people will trickle in as time goes by. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded, and we'll send you the recorded link as well. My name is Meetin Wen. I am the STEM graduate school Pew Fellow.
And I'm Janice. I'm the
Janice.
Humanities Social Science Grad School Peer Fellow.
Amazing. And today we're going to be talking about your personal and diversity statement that is often required for your master's, sometimes optional depending on the program, your master's and your PhD application. So to start, as a reminder, that to think of your personal and diversity statement, specifically your personal statement, as something that's very separate and different from your undergrad personal statement. So a lot of us would oftentimes think about, oh, like I'll go back to my undergrad statement and build on that based on, you know, everything I've done in undergrad and post-bac, if you did a post-bac. But the personal statement for graduate school, or the statement of purpose, is a little different in that we're looking for different things. So the personal statement is really kind of like not a gauge of how well you can use metaphors or anything emotional. Some people will incorporate narratives, and we'll go through that. But that narrative serves a purpose in terms of like career intention and motivation. Your personal statement for grad school is often not past focus. And often the time we don't see like things like ever since I was a child, similar to like things that are often prevalent in undergrad statement. It is also not a explanation of everything you've done and that is listed on your CV and resume. Actually, it's just really expanding on a couple of those major meaningful experiences. It's your personal statement is the purpose of your personal statement is how schools will understand your goals, your research and professional and career goals, is a gauge of how well you can communicate your journey intellectually as well as your professional journey. And it is a combination of an autobiography, as well as a cover letter and a persuasive essay about why you want to pursue graduate school training. So all of that is like what you want to convey in your personal statement.
Okay, so this I start off the slide by prefacing that that as we said in Grad School 101, if you were there for that presentation, if not, it should be already up on our YouTube page. Grad school applications are highly subjective and highly variable between school to school, department to department, country to country, and even program to program within the same institution. So we will talk about key questions here, but please cross-check with what specific directions and requirements that your program or programs that you're applying to put out. There are slight variations, and they are sensitive to these variations when they read the statements, when the admissions readers read statements for their programs. But in general, and we're talking about master's, PhD, grad school in general, these are some of the points that you want to include in a personal statement. So first, what you've done, so your past background. And as Mitian already put and said, this is not a laundry list of everything in your resume. You really want to be very attentive and deliberate in the curation of these skills. And this is actually quite closely related to numbers 2 and 3 of what your goals are for grad school. Is it to pursue a specific research project? Is it to gain more knowledge, breadth and depth in a specific field? For PhD students, this can also be tied to specific professional goals, such as, do you want to, aim for a tenure track position at a research university? Do you want to teach more? What do you want to do? And 3, what research questions would you like to answer? And this is something that I've actually been seeing, and Mitian, you can speak on the STEM side, but from humanities applications, even to masters in social sciences, it's not just about coursework anymore, because a lot of people do have master thesis or dissertation. So this is something that even in the general, most broad sweeping terms, you want to specify. And I would, going back to 1, I would say that after you've kind of come up with a structure or what you want to say for 2 and 3, that will help you further curate and kind of tighten the background, key elements from your background that you choose to include. And don't be worried if you have a lot of stuff you want to include. They will see your CV, and being on the other side of things and having professors talk to me retroactively about my application, they really did read my CV very closely. So they will do that. For 4 and 5, this I already mentioned can be professional goals, like very specific professional goals. But if you don't have that in mind, it is still good to mention the general direction that you want to go, just because they want to make sure that you are a good fit for the program, as we had discussed in a previous section. And some programs are better suited than others to cater to a variety of professional and academic goals. And they just want to make sure that in this program, in this particular institution as well, there are the appropriate resources to support you in your journey, wherever that might take you. So absolutely, the statement at the bottom, think of it as a personal narrative of your intellectual and or professional preparation and goals. One thing leads very organically into the other. And this is also something that you might have noticed me kind of flipping through questions. We'll come up with this later, but this means that you will go through multiple iterations of drafts and edits and outlines and, you know, restarts, starts, false starts, etc. So it's very important, and I will say it at the very beginning, to give yourself time and the patience and the mental kind of headspace also to prepare yourself for multiple drafts over the course of weeks and months.
Yeah, and then there's a question in the Q&A about who reads the application and who are the main deciders. So I can answer for STEM. STEM is generally whichever department you're applying to, and that includes the department chair, the people you mention in your essays that you would like to work with. And oftentimes it's like a subset of these committees that go through the first screen. And once you're invited, everyone will read it. We're invited for interviews. And it depends, but I would say like fair game, department chair, whichever faculty is part of the admissions committee for the department, or the program itself.
Yeah. For humanities and social sciences, I'm more familiar with the humanities, and I will say that a lot of social sciences, and this is important when you're also coming up thinking about who to talk to, a lot of social sciences that are quantitative follow STEM procedures. That is, like, for example, psychology, clinical psychology, stuff like that, that is very STEM oriented, that will fall more under the kind of protocols and admissions etiquette that STEM departments follow. For smaller departments and qualitatively oriented humanities and social sciences department, it really depends. If you're applying to a large department such as history or English that have multiple subfields, what they'll do is generally have you state, and this is why it's very important to identify what research questions or what fields, subfields that you're interested in, because they will split you up based on region or time period. For example, in history, are you doing European history in the 20th century, or are you doing medieval Japanese history? Then the professors, relevant professors from each field, will read your application, then pick the ones that they think are a good fit, or they for the department or for their particular research teaching groups, bring it to the larger pool of the department, and then kind of make their cases for why they should get 2 students, or why should they get these students, and what they will do for the department holistically. For smaller departments like mine, where there are only 5 faculty members, everybody will read your application, but the people who will read your application are the professors that you mentioned, including professors from other departments, and the DGS, the Director of Graduate Studies, and the chair, who often form the admissions committee. But for smaller departments, it is safe to assume that everybody will read your application at some point or another.
And sometimes, especially if the programs admission committee have student representative, you may have older students in the program read the application as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Great question. So we'll jump straight into structure for your personal statement. So structure is also very important, and don't think you have to adhere to the structure right away. As Jenna said, like you will go to multiple drafts and the structure will likely change. And drafting is great because then it just reads better in the end. So I would we recommend starting with a intriguing lead in. Some people use like a narrative lead. The first paragraph of your personal statement is essentially your thesis. So essentially summarizing everything you want to prove or want to emphasize in your personal statement. And that is essentially why you want to study whatever field you're applying into, immunology, for example. You should have 1 to 2 paragraphs sharing your academic and professional history, recent coursework, research jobs, experiences that has led you to the realization and inform your decision to pursue graduate training. Stay away from any childhood or like younger experiences that doesn't add more like proof to your why you want to pursue graduate training that are like not immediately relevant, for example. And then focus your whole effort on like what motivate you to pursue grad school. Like was there a particular internship, coursework, professor, research experience that you had? Sometimes this may be personal experience as well. So that those things are immediately relevant, I would include, but unless they are, I would not. So these are where you essentially lift up a couple of experiences, for example, internships, research experience from your CV, and expand and tell the why behind the story behind these experiences, not just what you learned. And in your personal statement, don't just state what you did, but why you did the experiences, but what you learned and how you grew from those experiences in regards to how you gain a deeper understanding of your motivation for pursuing graduate training and your career goals. And here is also where you can also elaborate on why you decided to pivot and change fields for graduate school, especially if your undergrad major is not immediately relevant to the graduate program you're applying to and why. So kind of documenting that as well. Anything to add, Shannon?
Nope.
And then after those experience documenting, we recommend an additional couple of paragraphs on your current and future interests and goals. So for each of these transition, for each of these breaks, is structure use strong transition from your prior experiences to your current one. And specifically for PhD program, discuss your prior research experiences and how that has been meaningful and impacted you. For masters, it may be job experiences and what they mean to you. But in the end, whatever you're talking about, it should relay on or emphasize why the specific experiences motivate you to pursue grad school. So laying the path for you to kind of demonstrate what research interests you want to pursue during your PhD and what excites you, so that programs can have a better idea of where you fit within the department. And for masters, it would be what coursework and skills you're looking to gain. And here is where you can also name drop specific faculty and who you may be interested in learning about. Or for PhD in grad school and master's specifically, you can also include specific programs. For example, I had a couple of students specifically cite like the translational program, the bench to bedside kind of situation, where that programs that are situated in medical schools are offering to their graduate students. And also like the purpose of these 2 or 3 paragraphs is to demonstrate what you want for your graduate degree and how you will achieve those goals in general. So demonstrating all of that.
Mhm. So a couple things to add in terms of these paragraphs on current future goals. So the quicker you can make the case in your statement that this particular program at this particular institution is a good fit for you, the better. Because that's, as we mentioned during our grad school 101 workshop, that's what they're really looking for. As much as, are you qualified as a general, like in a general sense, will you be able to carry out, a sustained research project for 5 to even 7, 8 years as a PhD student, etc. But really and for master's programs too, this is extremely important about why you in this specific program at this specific school. It's not just why you as an immunobiologist or why you as a historian. So the sooner I've found that the most successful and compelling personal statements include that school specificity almost immediately. And this actually goes back to the previous slide, will shape, again, that curation of background, because for some schools, they might emphasize, say, teaching more than, and other schools, they really emphasize the service and academic service. And this is all something that you want to judge for yourself by talking to professors, reaching out to people, grad students, professors at the department, etc. And engaging and building a case for yourself. And same goes for name dropping professors. I would say that they're not so much interested in their name being mentioned, although they do get really excited if you want to work with them, as much as they're interested in the rationale behind it. So being able to connect, I want to work with this professor because they have done XYZ. I want to do XYZ in grad school, and this is how it's going to get there. So the why, the how, the so what is equally as important as the who or the what. So statements such as, I see a lot of statements and drafts of people just saying, I'm really excited by Professor so-and-so's work. I think it's super fascinating, and I would learn a lot from them. Sure, that's why you're mentioning them in the statement, but you need to go a level deeper and say, something like, if by working with Professor so-and-so in courses and as a potential member of my committee, I would be able to pursue a certain methodology or build on some previous knowledge that I had, or enter into a new field and learn from their research on XYZ. And it is totally okay, at least in the humanities and qualitative social sciences, to actually mention stuff that they've done, like their work on 20th century critical theory in Germany, and seeing how that connects. And that's the kind of level of specificity that will really sell you as a really good fit for these programs.
Exactly. And as Jenna said, like, the importance of meaningfully name-dropping faculties is critical. And this this paragraph, or this, like, in your personal statement, you should really try to demonstrate your fit, because that's what programs are evaluating you on, in regards to how well will you fit into the department, what does the program has to offer you, and what do you have to offer the program. And so this is where connecting the skill set that you've learned and built, and so that's why it's important to demonstrate the skills that you have learned as well, in research or otherwise, and connecting that to the Pacific program, as well as mentioning resources, collaboration that you're excited about that the program offers. One thing that I find to be very effective is when you're talking about the skill set, the research that faculty are doing, connecting your current research with the faculty. Like, I'm excited to work with X, Professor X, in order to expand on my current research, and incorporate a different field into the interdisciplinary research, etc. And also to demonstrate the benefit from the program, how you would benefit, and how they would benefit from having you there. Like, are you a big scientific outreach person? So engage in kind of like understanding what scientific outreach look like at the program and how you would add to that and what you would participate in. So like more of those understanding and of the program itself and the environment is important. And of course, like your personal statement, each school has different criteria on the length, but it should generally be 1 to 2 pages, single space, about 1,000 words. Although some school has a character limit. So this is where the Excel sheet that we mentioned in regards to tracking requirements is important.
Yeah. And this is, so we've talked a lot about content, but the form of the personal statement is just as important. And this is not just something I say as somebody in the humanities working on literature is sensitive to both form and content. As you saw, it's only a 1,000 words. You do not have that much space. Some programs tend to be a little bit more generous with the word count, and others are very, very, very strict and will stop reading at word 1,000, even if it is in the middle of a sentence or the middle of a thought or a page. This is why I think the language that you use and being very, very careful and deliberate with the language is just as important as what you choose to put in. And this is why, as Mityan and I have said, you will go through multiple rounds of drafting, even just to polish up your tone, polish up that style. So obviously personal, emphasis on personal in the personal statement. So I would recommend, even just on a basic structural sentence level, I statements. Avoid the passive voice, really paint that picture for them and show them all that you've done. So discuss, lots of things from your perspective, your voice, first person. That is highly, highly recommended. And then with choosing your examples as well, be as specific as possible within the space given. There is actually quite like some wiggle room, but you will be surprised at how much information or how much you can accomplish within 3 or 4 sentences describing. And this will also force you, in terms of content, going back that direction, to really only include the parts that are necessary. So if you think about, concision on the level of how you write, but also what you write. The third point, I think that actually there are bullet points. This might have been a staggered. Yeah. The third point is as much as you are writing in a particular genre, like my current advisors told me when I was actually, when I talked to her before, during the application process, this is a genre that you will learn to write very, very well and then never touch again. And it is quite prescriptive in some ways with the content, but be original, speak in your own voice. It's highly stylized, but you don't want to be cliche. You still want to come off as somebody who is a good writer and can communicate their thoughts in a cohesive, cogent way, and not just rely on cliches. And also this kind of goes on the level of word count too. Cliches tend to take up a lot of space. So you want to, what you can say in one word, make sure you're not saying in like 10 or something. And then again, returning to the active voice, this is something that your high school English teacher probably told you a lot, but it's still the case here. Active voice is always good. Be purposeful in your narrative and also in the word choice. English is a beautiful language in how driven it is, with lots of verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and we are blessed in that manner. And you have a lot at your disposal that you can use to really hammer that point home. And yeah, the next slide is just about tone. This goes also to the level of how you write. You want to find that right balance between confidence and not kind of being a little too deferent, because you are applying to grad school. You have this passion, you have the chops. You want to be sure that that comes through very, very clearly, but you also don't want this to be a laundry list of, oh, look at me, and presenting yourself as if you've done everything and you're kind of at the pinnacle of your career when you want to present it in a more open way, and showing that you still have room to grow in the future. It is a fine line, but when done well, it's really effective. And then for PhD statements, but even some master statements, depending on the particular requirements of your program, you will be a future colleague. You will be in labs with them. You're going to be in, running conferences and symposia and seminars, etc. So you want to show that on multiple levels, academic, professional, and even personal, that they can have conversations with you. They can imagine you being the contributor in their group, and also you being, not you being confident, but also modest and polite and things like that. So this really does go hand in hand with, form and content really, really go together.
Yeah, and you wanna essentially convey confidence as well as like a willingness to learn or excitement to learn as well, because that's what grad school is. And for clarification, Teresa, we also are gonna talk about diversity statement as well very soon after the example we have next. Then specifically how to integrate academic interests. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that later as well. Good question. And then before we go into a practice exercise, I want to share some like very quick advice on style. And so as Janice said, to be active and be very careful about word choice. So first, to use verbs to express any action in a sentence. So identify the action and make it a verb. So instead of saying I nervously watch in anticipation, it's like sounds so much better, reads so much better to say and I anticipated the worst. It's just concise. And then replace forms of to be with more active verbs. So action makes prose feel much livelier. So I was overcome with grief versus I sobbed. And then limiting the amount of adjectives and adverbs that you use. Really rely on your verbs. Avoid using adjective for emphasis, and really striving for contrast. So I slowly walked versus I strolled. So it just sounds concise, and you save words as well. That's important because you're limited in words, number of words. But being concise is very powerful. So whenever, if you want to do a quick screen to your first draft, anytime you're using very, really, actually, some of those words can be just removed, and just the sentence is more concise, more active, and just more short, confidence. And of course, proofread. Read out loud if you have to, leave it for a week and come back to it if you have to, have other people proofread it. There's the Poorvu Writing Center, there's us, and take time to draft and proofread. So if your application is due in December, it's good. You should start your personal statement in October, so that you have that 2 months to like draft, proofread, have other people read it and give their feedback.
I will also say, in terms of proofreading, sometimes a trick is get somebody who knows about your research, such as a well-intended parent, a grandparent, a sibling, a friend, and not in academia, and have them read for both clarity, or say like, it's totally fine if you don't understand anything that I'm saying. I just need you to make sure I don't have comma splices, or I'm not missing a preposition or something like that. Second, please, if you're applying to multiple schools, make sure that a statement for Yale does not go somewhere else. And make sure that check the professors' names, check their book attributions if you're including, check citations if you're including that. It is heartbreaking when it happens, but it happens always every year, especially if you're juggling 8 applications that a very well-intended, well-meaning applicant does not even make it past the threshold because they sent the statement to the wrong school, or they thought that they had changed everything doing Control F, but missed a couple names or couple places, labs, etc. along the way.
And if you happen to find out, especially if you
email.
send the paragraph, yeah, just email them.
Mhm.
And it's good for you to find it out rather than
Yeah, wait for them. And it's totally okay. And just ask if you can send a new clean copy of your personal statement.
Mhm.
Okay.
And they
So
know. Yeah.
yeah.
They know you're
They're
applying to
pretty
Poorvu.
understanding. Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll take like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. We would like you to read this excerpt from a personal statement and just type in the chat things that you like about this and things that you would improve. And this can be on any level in terms of content, form, the way it's written, tone, style, whatever you notice. So we can take a couple minutes and then we'll start just type in the chat. Okay, so feel free to continue writing in the chat, but for the sake of time, we're going to just put out some suggestions, and these might also be things that you've noticed. So one thing that I notice about this is that it obviously it depends on the larger context around it, but it is quite verbose, and it is quite descriptive, but in the wrong ways. So this, in terms of level of form, there are some things that we've suggested when with Poorvu, like the Writing Center, that this could be made more concise. On the level of content, I see this as say like good compelling opening paragraph about somebody's first introduction to cardiology, medicine, what have you. But if this were placed in a background paragraph explaining what this person did, there is a lot of talk and attention given to Dr. Harris. I'm sure Dr. Harris is a fantastic doctor and clearly made a very big impact on the students' career life passions. However, what needs to come through more is what the student did in this volunteering hands-on experience. So more first-person action, especially action in the volunteering, than just ventriloquizing what Dr. Harris did. What are your thoughts, Mitian?
Yeah, I think also it's the narrative is great. But whenever you have a narrative in your personal statement, keep it concise and really only narrate the critical moment that had led you to your epiphany, etc. And interest. And I think that this is a great opening, but like immediately jump straight to your why, and how that drove you to your career choice and pursue of graduate school.
Yeah.
And then you can see
Okay.
that the polished version
Yeah.
is significantly shorter. So that's important, and it reads much more concisely.
Yeah. And as we said, as an opening paragraph, this works beautifully. Obviously, this was just, I think, one step in future drafts. So in their final polished version, this might have been even shorter or looked completely different. Okay, now we're getting to the part of our presentation about the diversity statement. So this is something, especially in the wake of the Supreme Court decision this year, this past summer, a lot more schools are putting as optional or even required essays. And I know the big example of this is the UC system, where a personal history statement is required or at least highly suggested when I was applying. Diversity statements can take multiple shapes and forms. This is something that I think is equally important for STEM and humanities, qualitative and quantitative programs. So we're just going to talk through some differences and key aspects that we see. So the main purpose of the diversity statement is it's basically a statement of community. What, as a community member, since you're not going to, write your dissertation or take coursework in a vacuum, what are you going to contribute to creating that environment that is inclusive, that is diverse, that is equitable, and that is also a pleasant place for professors, grad students, undergrads to collaborate and learn in. So this is often, but not always, a place that you can also share with the admissions committee how your personal, cultural, socioeconomic, national background, what have you, and experiences that you may have on the more personal side, how this has impacted your entry into higher education, or how it's impacted you personally or academically. And obviously always connecting it to the future, how it's shaped your motivation to go to grad school, what you want to do with grad school during and after your programs. This causes a little bit of confusion between do I include a statement and what do I include in a diversity statement. So actually, I think we have a slide on this one that's comparing it. If we can go to the next one. Yes, great. So a personal statement, I would say, is more academically oriented. So this is about your academic and professional history, basically outlining some of the key points that we talked about in our presentation thus far. A diversity statement, it also is very subjective. It depends on your research, and for some people, especially a lot of students in the humanities, their personal interest backgrounds, and social sciences even, their personal interest backgrounds, heritage, culture, highly impacts and influences and is an integral part of their research. This sometimes can be a kind of extension of your personal statement, of explaining, what are the more personal reasons that I got into this field. Others, it might not be as obvious. So this might look more like other academic service activities, or what you want to do in other parts of your graduate degree, because because many US programs include teaching. And that is an absolutely valid way of impacting diversification of the institution outside of, academic research, interfacing with undergrads and sometimes even high school students. For some people, this looks like mentorship, volunteering, doing academic service such as being a representative, creating affinity groups. There are a myriad of possibilities, but the important thing is to really think about, why and how are you going to, whatever diversity has meant for you and whatever it means to you, how is this going to affect you as a community member of your program, department, institution as a whole? Anything to add?
In
Lucia?
addition,
Mhm.
in addition, you can talk about what diversity means in terms of your research, and how it is important for innovation, etc., as well as your graduate school training and learning, and how that has facilitated your learning as an undergrad, and your learning as a researcher, as well as the environment itself.
Mhm.
And
So this is a lot, so feel free to screenshot this. And again, this will be recorded.
yeah, and then kind of to get you started, the diversity statement can be very personal to some people, and others, but we have a bunch of questions here to help you get you started. So first, like on the round of reflecting on your beliefs and your experiences, has your past educational experience shaped the kind of scholars you want to be and the kind of researcher you want to be, and a teacher, because all graduate students are teaching in some capacity and mentoring. What does diversity mean to you? And like what obstacles have you experienced in accessing education, the privileges, advantages, or the lack thereof, or the opportunities that have helped you along the way. Describe any experiences that has made you feel excluded or out of place, and reflect on that in terms of belonging and sense of um, uh, identity, professional identity, and how that has fostered your development. And then connecting these experiences to opportunities in the graduate school program, what the school provide in regards to issues related to DEI, and belonging, other programs or initiatives that you're particularly excited about. And so here's the parallels between your personal statement and your diversity statement. Diversity statement would be particularly related to any DEI, including scientific outreach, to the community or the broader marginalized community in general, and give specific examples of times in an academic setting that has helped foster diversity that you really hope to exemplify, and build on, and as well as scenarios of like in which you as a researcher could promote DEI in your scholarly work, and particularly if you have done it before, how you will expand on that in graduate school. And also, finally, reflect on any longer term questions and thoughts, including how you see yourself relating to or thinking about issues of access, and inclusion in research and scholarly life, and how has your personal story of experiences connect to your intellectual journey. Anything to add, Janice?
No, because I think the next slide covers a lot of common pitfalls and common questions that we get from students as follow-up, and we also see when reviewing such drafts. So like the personal statement, the more personal you can make this and really make this I-centered, the better. So this basically, one thing that I recommend my students to do is first kind of come up with a basic thesis statement. This does not need to make it into the final cut of your essay, but it really helps in outlining and the drafting process of how would you answer the question? Diversity to me is. Diversity means, what does diversity mean to me? What does inclusivity mean to me? What does that look like to me? And that should be a starting point about, again, curating those experiences that you've had either in classrooms that you've been in, if you have worked in the industry, what you've seen outside, current events, anything, stuff that you've encountered in your research. The list goes on and on. Because this will help you think about other instances or what to draw from your CV or your life in general to really support this statement, this thesis statement of what diversity means to you. And this also allows this kind of way of approaching this allows also for non-evident definitions of diversity, diverse experiences to come through. Like, for example, just give an example, in my field, in German studies, being a white cisgender heterosexual man from Europe or America is not diverse. However, there have been really interesting conversations and stuff because of neurodivergence, because of various socioeconomic issues, because obviously the German system and German politics, etc., is very different from life in the US. So there are other ways to think about this, and a lot of programs, and we also encourage our students to be as creative as possible when approaching these questions. However, that also comes with its limitations, and some students, it seems like a very silly example, but the point of discussing having brown hair in a family where everybody's blonde, but you want to stay within the common kind of accepted tenets of what diversity means. You could also, one thing, if you think, reflecting, gee, I come from a pretty privileged background, is reflect on that. Because hopefully you've, had situations or encounters where you've had to check your privilege or reflect on, what exactly it means to be from such a privileged background and how that's going to impact you being an ally to other people, or, access when that was never an issue for you. That is also a way to talk about it, because that is a question that you might get in the interview, or that is something that you need to actively think about when creating inclusive safe spaces in your departments and institutions. The other common pitfall, if you do have such a compelling story, is that people get caught up in that personal narrative aspect. And this is definitely something that I had to work on, about just writing about your background without thinking about the so what, and without thinking about how that applies to what you're going to do. So make sure, as Mitian said, that you are always connecting it to your future goals, concrete things that you're going to do, plan to do, that are tangible, instead of just having this be a personal narrative. The final point I want to say is that although some schools do require it, if you are really stuck, or if you feel as though you do not have a graceful way of writing a diversity statement, I would not, and it's optional, I would not include it. It will, if you, especially after COVID, Black Lives Matter, the Supreme Court decision, this can backfire. And I have seen things backfire from the other end of the admission spectrum. So, and they truly want people who are passionate and invested. If they, they won't count it against you if it's optional and you choose not to share. So definitely sit on it, sleep on it, think about it. And we are here to talk and, field ideas as well.
Yeah, and oftentimes, the diversity statement may require more reflection, especially if this is something you haven't thought much about in your previous education or personal experience.
So we
And
actually
so we
have one
have an
last, oh yeah,
example.
yeah. We have one last
Sorry.
example. Yeah, so Mitian, how about you talk us through this example as well?
Yeah, so just an example from a Yale undergrad who wrote about their in the diversity statement, but essentially outlining and structuring it in a very structured way in regards to describing their motivation and what diversity means to them and how the experiences um, in undergrad, as well as the identity, has led to their motivation. But importantly, in this essay, you can really tell what the student and what activities the student would engage in as a graduate student. So like first of all, in yellow here, the student outlined what they've done and what they will do. So really stating that explicitly. So of course, like this I aspire to apply experiences and continue to work collaborate to help foster spaces of belonging. So that's the primary thesis right there. And then they built on that with kind of giving examples of how they have built this community and fostering spaces of belonging, including being a lead student coordinator of Black Church at Yale, and then as well being a part of Yale's OGSDD in regards to already showing the already engagement in student programming for graduate students. And kind of like outlining what particular organization they want to be a part of as a graduate student and how this has helped will support their personal background in general. So I think this outline is very important and narrates, kind of gives, not allow the reader to assume what the engagement would look like, but actually state it explicitly and that they have done the research as well. Okay, so in summary, for both your personal and diversity statement, draft early, draft often, and get as many eyes on the statement as possible. We're here to help. Make the appointments with your personal statement through the career link, the Yale career link, as you've all been doing. And also the Poorvu Center is amazing as well, where you can sign up for one-on-one writing appointments with the writing mentor that's separate from us. So that's another set of eyes that you can send your drafts to. So I really encourage you to utilize all your resources as well.
Yep, and now we can open it up to any questions. You can type it in the Q&A.
If there are no questions, we'll have you for a couple more minutes, but if there are no questions, or you have questions that come up later on, feel free to email Janice, Reed, or I, and we'll be happy to answer them individually, and of course, do the appointments as well.
And keep your eyes open for a workshop coming later this semester about interviews. All right, thanks everybody for coming, and maybe we'll see some of you soon.